Coming up today, the two Koreas are meeting to thrash out the details of planned reunions for families separated by the Korean War. It's hoped the event will happen next month. The search goes on for the 8 people unaccounted for after their fishing boat capsized last weekend off Korea's southern coast. 10 people have been confirmed dead. Plus, the head of the International Monetary Fund says the US Federal Reserve must be certain the job market and inflation are strong enough before it starts raising rates. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's midday on Monday, the 7th of September. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this afternoon, the two Koreas are locked in negotiations at the border village of Panmunjom today as they try to set the date, location and scale of a planned set of family reunions. The resumption of the reunions for families, war-separated families, was one of the key agreements reached during last month's high-level talks between the two Koreas. Hwang Sang-hee reports.
Officials from South and North Korea are discussing the details of their planned set of reunions for war-separated families. Departing for the border village of Panmunjom Monday morning, South Korea's chief delegate Lee Kang vowed to do his best for a positive outcome.
We will do our best to meet the expectations and wishes of the people.
Up for discussion at the Red Cross working level talks are the location, date, and scale of the event. The reunions are most likely to be held early or mid-October following Chuseok, Korea's Thanksgiving holiday, at North Korea's Mount Kumgang Resort. This is where the last family reunions were held in February 2014. The event is expected to be held in 2 rounds, allowing around 100 family members from each side to meet their loved ones. Millions of families were separated during the Korean War in the 1950s. Out of the nearly 130,000 registered divided family members in the South, nearly half have already passed away before any opportunity to reunite with family and relatives. South Korea also plans to propose holding the reunions on a regular basis, exchanging a list of surviving family members from both sides and making video messages. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Now to the latest on the fishing boat sinking that killed at least 10 people and left 8 unaccounted for over the weekend. The Navy and the Jeju Coast Guard continued their search throughout the night and into this morning in waters off Korea's southern coast, but have yet to find any of the missing. More than 70 boats, including naval vessels, patrol ships and fishing boats, along with 4 aircraft, have been scouring the area. Members of the Navy's ship salvage unit have also launched underwater operations. Officials say they plan to launch a probe into the sinking, including whether the boat complied with safety regulations. However, as the captain was found dead and the 3 survivors are in critical condition, the investigation is expected to take a while. The boat carrying 21 fishermen was found capsized in the early hours of Sunday morning local time. Nothing is confirmed yet, but it's believed high waves caused the boat to flip over. Korea's rival parties are negotiating over whether to hold a plenary session this week before the inspection of government offices starts on Thursday. The ruling Saenuri Party wants the motion appointing Supreme Court Justice nominee Lee Ki-taek passed as soon as possible, but the main opposition, New Politics Alliance for Democracy, is unwilling to confirm Lee unless the ruling party accepts its demand to create a special committee to look into the government's so-called special activity costs. As it stands, spending for extraordinary or classified activities does not require officials to declare the money they use. This black budget, which runs into the hundreds of millions of dollars a year, has been increasing annually. President Park Geun-hye's approval rating has passed the 50% mark for the first time in around 10 months. A poll released by polling agency Realmeter on Monday showed that 50.4% of Koreans are either satisfied or very satisfied with her performance. This is the 5th consecutive week of improving numbers. It's jumped more than 15 percentage points over that period. Now, the president's handling of the recent inter-Korean confrontation, along with her trip to China last week, seemed to have had a positive effect. During the 2 days she was in China, her approval rating actually peaked at almost 54%. The last time her rating was this high was November 2014, again after a trip to China, where she had attended an APEC meeting. The head of the International Monetary Fund is urging the US Federal Reserve to take its time deciding whether to raise interest rates, and says the Fed should move only when it's sure the decision is unlikely to be reversed down the line. Speaking at the G20 ministers meeting in Turkey over the weekend, Christine Lagarde said the IMF thinks it's better to make sure the data are absolutely confirmed and that there's no uncertainty, neither in terms of price stability nor on the job market, before it actually makes that move. Her comments come as many emerging economies, including Korea, are concerned a rate hike could trigger large outflows of capital from emerging economies into dollar-denominated assets. Now, also on the sidelines of that G20 meeting, Korea's central bank chief Lee Ju-yeol met with his counterparts from China and Japan. The officials discussed the recent market rout in China and the effect of a possible US rate hike on the global economy. Now, for many in Korea, a position at a state-run corporation is considered a dream job. However, a new report offers somewhat of a wake-up call to that, revealing that a growing number of those employees are not really living the dream. Kim Min-ji reports.
Roughly 44,000. That's the number of temporary workers at Korea's public institutions. According to a state audit report compiled by Representative Shim Jae-chul of the ruling Saenuri Party, there are about 270,000 people at 341 public institutions, which means that 1 in every 10 employees are temporary workers. The figure is in contrast to the common perception of jobs in the public sector in Korea, which have often been referred to as dream jobs because of job security and benefits, resulting in intense competition every year among job seekers. However, the reality is that some 90,000 are not beneficiaries, as more than 44,000 are temporary workers, some 32,000 short-term workers, and over 10,000 part-time workers. At Korail Tech, involved in the construction and maintenance of the railroad track of Korea Railroad Corporation, there were 44 regular workers, but over 900 non-regular employees. Other institutions with a large proportion of irregular workers were Korea Land and Housing Corporation and the National Pension Service. The report also showed that the proportion of regular workers fell to 67.6% in 2014 from over 70% in 2010. The number of temporary workers also fell about a percentage point in the same period. However, it has coincided with an increase in the numbers of workers through indirect employment. The lawmaker pointed out that the large proportion of irregular workers is a result of public institutions turning to non-direct employment, which is not subject to the strict regulations of labor laws that curb the number of full-time workers to control labor costs. He called for the government to come up with effective measures to solve the situation. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, the price of cabbages is falling following the sharp rise in vegetable prices brought on by the recent drought here in Korea. The Korea Consumer Agency says average cabbage prices in August fell 6.4% compared to the previous month to $2.4 a head. This is the second consecutive monthly fall since prices started to rise rapidly in January. Thanks to nationwide efforts to counter the drought, radish prices are also falling. However, onion prices jumped 5.4% from last month to more than $3 a bag. That's the highest August price in 3 years. Now, Koreans are particularly sensitive about the prices of these vegetables because they are the core ingredients in Korea's staple kimchi. Korean cosmetics stand as the second best-selling imported cosmetics in the Chinese market, trailing only France and surpassing Japan now. Korea's trade ministry says China imported $1.7 billion worth of cosmetics from January to June this year. That's up more than 36% compared to the same period last year. Sales of Korean brands soared over 250% on year to $370 million, snatching 22% of the market. France, which holds 30% of China's imported cosmetics market, topped the list with nearly $513 million. Now, last year, Korea was fourth after France, Japan and the US. Industry experts attribute the success of Korean brands in China to the Korean wave, and they expect growth to continue. Korean language education is making its way into more and more schools around the world. Korea's education ministry says more than 1,100 schools in 26 different countries taught Korean language as part of their regular curriculum last year. And that's more than double the number of schools recorded in 2010. And thanks to the rise, the number of students studying Korean also doubled to some 93,000 last year. The location and type of school varies a lot, ranging from elementary, middle and high schools in the United States to schools in several Asian and European countries. Thousands of refugees arrived in Germany over the weekend after Austria and Hungary eased travel restrictions to let them continue their journey west. While the European Union remains deeply divided on ways to handle the crisis, Pope Francis has called on every religious community to lend a helping hand to those in need. Son Jung-in has more.
Receiving a warm welcome from crowds, thousands of exhausted yet exhilarated refugees set foot in Germany on Sunday, concluding a treacherous journey from Hungary via Austria. After an initial registration, the refugees went through medical checkups and were provided with packages of food. The European Union is still divided over how to cope with the surge in refugees from the Middle East and Africa. Western Europe, including Germany, are urging other member nations to open their doors and share the burden, but Eastern countries like Hungary are opposed to the move.
Germany cannot take all the refugees when the European Union has 28 member states.
Austria has said it will end the relaxation of its borders after emergency measures were taken to allow around 12,000 asylum seekers to travel freely from Hungary to Western Europe. Pope Francis, who has repeatedly appealed to the international community to do more for the refugees, called on Europe's Catholics to shelter refugees fleeing death from war and hunger. He announced plans that he said would start in the Vatican.
I appeal to the parishes, the religious communities, the monasteries and sanctuaries of all Europe to show the true meaning of the gospel and take in one family of refugees.
Pope Francis said 2 of the Vatican's parishes will shelter 2 families of refugees. European bishops plan to discuss the Pope's latest appeal at an annual conference in Jerusalem next week. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Now, graphene is a so-called miracle material that could revolutionize nanotechnology. For the past few years, Korean scientists have been trying to develop a number of graphene-related technologies to get a head start in the burgeoning industry. Our Won Ji-yeon reports.
Graphene is a single layer of carbon atoms that are bonded together in a honeycomb pattern of hexagons. Known as a miracle material, it's 1 million times thinner than paper and yet stronger than diamond. And because of its flexibility and ability to conduct electricity, graphene has the potential to create bendable electronics. However, despite its outstanding traits, graphene's delicate layer can easily get contaminated during transfer. As a solution, researchers from the Korea Institute of Machinery and Materials have developed a new technology to minimize such damage.
We have adjusted the load on the roller machine to prevent graphene from breaking apart during transfer. This way, we can continuously pattern and transfer large sheets of highly conductive graphene.
This roll-to-roll machine can directly transfer graphene using a lamination process. It can mass-produce graphene sheets that are 500 centimeters wide at the speed of 2 meters per minute. Also, it doesn't leave any residues, unlike other transfer methods. Scientists say the technology could become a new turning point in commercializing graphene.
Now that we have the ability to mass-produce transparent sheets of graphene conductors at competitive prices, we can use the technology to create flexible LED and touch panels.
The research is part of the government's efforts to support graphene technology with hopes to make Korea one of the world's first nations to commercialize this so-called miracle material. Korean firms have already secured more than 90% of graphene-related patents in the world. Won Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
Well, those are the stories we've been following on this Monday afternoon in Seoul. For more of the latest, don't forget to check out the website arirang.com. It's also worth downloading our smartphone application. You can just search for Arirang TV, and there you'll find all the latest news and Arirang TV programming. Have a great day. Goodbye.